Margaret Thatcher and Angela Merkel, powerful women in politics. Thatcher and Merkel were similar in some ways. Besides being the first female leaders of their countries, they both had science backgrounds. Thatcher had a degree in chemistry, and Merkel even had a doctor's degree in physics. Speaking of differences, both leaders had their own approach to leadership. Thatcher was known for being tough, earning her the nickname the Iron Lady. She made big changes to the UK's economy by cutting the power of trade unions and supporting free market policies. Merkel, on the other hand, was known for being calm and preferring teamwork. She managed crises by listening to people's opinions before making her own decisions. In 2015, Merkel decided to take in nearly 1 million refugees from different parts of the world. She also supported plans to help refugees fit into German society. Both leaders showed that women can lead with strength and intelligence. Thatcher and Merkel broke down barriers and paved the way for future female leaders, which stressed the importance of women in government roles.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to English for You. I'm Mike.
I'm Nikki.
And today we are in our second day of the article all about two very famous and important female leaders of the last few years, Margaret Thatcher and Angela Merkel, powerful women in politics. So yesterday we talked a little bit about their careers. Both of them were leaders of their country, Margaret Thatcher being the Prime Minister of the UK in the 1980s, and Angela Merkel being the Chancellor of Germany more recently. So they had different job titles, but basically their jobs were the same, the leaders of their country.
And they're both the first female leaders in their country.
That's
right?
true, in their country's history. Well, I mean, I guess we could count Queen Elizabeth I as being the first leader of Britain, but she was a queen. She wasn't
elected.
She wasn't elected. She was born into the job. Exactly right. Probably had, in many ways, less power than Margaret Thatcher, being a queen in the late 1500s. But certainly, yes, in what we would say, if we're looking at this from a history point of view, in the modern era, right, in the 20th century after World War II, kind of to the time we live in now, yes, these were definitely two of the first and certainly two of the most important female leaders. So let's find out more about them. We're going to be checking into their background and see how their education and life experience before they got into politics may have influenced them. And then we'll also look at some of the really important decisions they made as leaders. So let's check it out. All right, so let's get into the article for today. It says, Thatcher and Merkel were similar in some ways. Interesting. I mean, of course, they're both women, and they were both the leaders of their country, which are in Europe. We could say that, but there's more to it. They are alike or similar. Not exactly the same, but there are some things that they have in common in some ways. So let's see. It says, besides being the first female leaders of their countries, besides the obvious one that we can all guess, here's something. They both had science backgrounds.
Wow, that's a surprise.
That is kind of surprising. I guess it also shows that even before they got into politics, they were kind of groundbreakers in their own way. I mean, these ladies would have been studying science in the 50s or the 1960s. And that time was also quite unusual for women to be into science, to have scientific backgrounds. What is a background? Well, when we're talking about a person, your background is basically your personal history or experience. All right. If you're going for a job, you might have to show them a resume or a CV, right? A list of the schools you went to, the things you studied, the work that you've done, the experiences you've had in your life up to that point. That's kind of a document that explains your background. It explains your history, where you were born, some of the interesting things you've done, the things that made you the person that you are today. All right. So I could say, hey, tell me some of your personal history. Here's an example. My dad is a businessman now, but he actually has a background in computer engineering.
那延续前一天提到的两位政治家柴契尔和梅克尔，今天我们要来介绍更多和他们有关的事情。那首先呢，这两位领导者的共同点，除了他们都是首位女性领导者之外，他们也有相同的科学背景。Background 这个名词指的是学经历或是背景。 Normally, when we talk about the background of somebody, we're talking about their family, their experience in education, or their previous work.
All right, so let's find out about these science backgrounds that both of these women share. It says Thatcher had a degree in chemistry. I have to say, I don't think I knew that, or if I'd heard it, I forgot about it, because she got into politics quite young, Margaret Thatcher. But I did know about Angela Merkel, and it says, and Merkel even had a doctor's degree in physics.
Wow.
When I read that, I was confused. I was sure she had studied chemistry as well. I looked it up. She actually had a doctor's degree, or a PhD, as we would probably say, in quantum
physics.
Quantum chemistry, I think it was written as. Yeah, quantum chemistry. And then I looked it up and it says quantum chemistry is a branch of physical chemistry. So is that physics or chemistry? I have to say, I'm not smart enough to figure out Angela Merkel's background.
What is your background?
What is my background?
Yeah.
My background in school would be anthropology and archaeology.
Oh, okay.
That would probably
Makes
be my
sense.
background.
Oh, okay.
But anyways, so yes, they both had scientific, it doesn't really matter exactly what they studied, but both of them studied science, and at least in Merkel's case, she got to the doctoral or PhD level. A lot of you might know if you go to university right after high school, you might get a BA, a bachelor's degree. And then you'll get a master's degree. And then after maybe 10 or 12 years of study, you might end up with a PhD, a doctoral degree. Of course, if you're a doctor in a hospital, that would be an MD, a medical doctor's degree. But basically, it means you've studied something at a very high level, and you've probably given over at least 10 years of your life getting this big education after you left high school. You're smart. I think it's safe to say. You're pretty smart.
Okay. 那有趣的是，柴契尔有一个化学相关的学位，梅克尔呢，则是有物理学的博士学位。
All right, so they did have some similarities in their background, but in other ways, they were very different. It says, speaking of differences, both leaders had their own approach to leadership. Of course, they had their own approach because they were different people, but it also kind of gives us the idea that their approaches, the way they led their countries, were actually quite different. If you say, I have my own approach, that's like saying, I have my own way of doing it that's different from yours.
那 speaking of 指的是当我们提到某件事情，那在这边课文的意思就是说，好，既然现在提到这些差异处了，那我们就顺便来讲一下这两位领导者他们分别不同的领导方式吧。
All right, so what about Thatcher? What was her approach to leadership? Well, I think we can sum it up with one word there. Thatcher was known for being tough, earning her the nickname the Iron Lady. Yeah, absolutely. This kind of talks about some of the sexism we were saying before.
Yeah, you have to be tough.
Right, exactly. Women politicians often have to be tougher than the men in some kinds of ways, and because of a sexist idea that women are weak and soft and can't make up their minds, always changing their minds. Emotional, that kind of thing, which of course none of that is really true, and men can be emotional too. Now, if we say someone is tough here, we're not saying it's like an overcooked piece of steak that you have to chew a lot. No, we mean strong, all right? You're strong in the face of challenges. You won't quit. You won't back down. You won't get frightened or run away or go, I can't. No, you will stick through it. You will take the knocks. You will get into the mud and do all the hard work, and you'll never say die. You'll never quit because you're tough. For example, we could say, do you think Cindy is tough enough to make it as a war reporter? It's a pretty stressful job. Yeah, you'd have to be pretty tough to be taking pictures or doing news reports in a place where, you know, there's danger, there's death, there's violence, people are being killed, and you're there doing your job reporting the news. That's a difficult job. It's, she had this nickname, the Iron Lady. I believe it was the Soviets, the Russians at the time, who gave her that. There was another time that people said that she would change her mind. She would turn from her decision, that idea that women never make a strong decision. They're like, well, maybe I'll do this or maybe I'll do that. And she had this very famous line from a speech where she said, the lady is not for turning. Like, I'm sticking with it even if it's a tough decision. I will stick with my decision. I won't change my mind. So she had several nicknames over her career, Iron Lady being the most famous one. A nickname is basically a casual name that is given to a person by their friends, and it often reflects their personality in some kind of way. So it's not the name you're given by your parents when you're born. It might be a name that you're given later on in life in school or by your family. So it's something your friends might know, but it won't be written on your ID or your passport or something like that, although you could use it as your Facebook name or your Instagram name or something. Here's an example. Robert is over 200 centimeters in height. That's why his nickname is Too Tall, because he's too tall.
那 tough 这个形容词指的是它在形容人的时候呢，是坚强的或者是强硬的。If we describe somebody for being tough, it means that they're very strong. 那如果我们用来形容事情，那如果一个事情是 very tough, it means that it's difficult to deal with. 那例句我们可以说 This is a tough team to beat. It means that it will be difficult to beat this team. 那另外还有另外一个名词 nickname 指的是绰号或者是外号，那就是 an informal name that other people give you, probably a name that you're called by your friends or your family.
So some of the other things that Margaret Thatcher did, it says she made big changes to the UK's economy by cutting the power of trade unions and supporting free market policies. She believed that the government should sort of get out of the job of doing businesses, of running, huge parts of the economy. At that time, they had, a British government ruled the train system. They owned the power system. They owned a lot of different things. She sold a lot of those off to companies, and she also tried to fight against the power of trade unions. There was a huge and sometimes violent strike among coal miners at the time when Margaret Thatcher was the leader, so she broke the unions. A union is basically an organized group of workers, right? So workers will get together. As one worker, I can't say to my boss, hey, you should pay me more money. But if I get all the workers in the factory to say to the boss, hey, you should pay us more money or we won't work, then suddenly those workers have a lot more power, right? So it's a way of balancing the power between the rich bosses who own the factory and the poorer workers who actually make the factory work and do the hard jobs. Here's an example sentence. Because of the hard work that unions did a long time ago, we have things like a 2-day weekend, fair pay, workers' rights, and little children no longer work in dangerous factories. All of those things were common or didn't happen, right? People didn't get days off and didn't get paid fairly before unions came along, about 100 years ago. And even now, unions are still fighting for workers' rights.
那他所做的事情呢，就是他改变了英国的经济，他削减了工会的力量，并且支持自由市场经济。那也就是说，他任由市场作为主导，政府不介入控制的意思。那 economy 这个名词指的是经济或者是经济的制度。Union 这个名词呢，也刚刚提过，就是某个行业的工会。
Back to the article, and now we're going to look at Angela Merkel and see how different. It says Merkel, on the other hand, so just using that phrase on the other hand gives us the idea that Merkel was quite different from Margaret Thatcher's sort of fighting personality. Merkel was different. On the other hand, it says she was known for being calm and preferring teamwork. So whereas Margaret Thatcher would be happy to fight with her opponents, Angela Merkel always tried to find a way to get along with her opponents and find ways to, to cooperate and work with them. It says she managed crises by listening to people's opinions before making her own decisions. All right, well, this sentence has our language in focus, so let's take a look at it.
那今天的 language and focus, on the other hand, 副词片语意思是另一方面来说，那它可以单独存在，或者是前面也可以加一个 on the one hand, 然后再来后面才会是 on the other hand. 那为了要表示出两个相反不同的概念，在这边课文的意思就是说，比较梅克尔和柴契尔两个人不同的领导方式。柴契尔的态度相较比较强硬，那反之梅克尔更重视聆听大家的声音和团队合作。So for example, on the one hand, Taipei is a very convenient city. On the other hand, it's overpopulated.
All right, back to our article. It says, in 2015, Merkel decided to take in nearly 1 million refugees from different parts of the world. In less than a year moving into Germany, of course, a lot of people in Germany were like, we can't do this. Where will all these people live and work and whatnot? But Merkel said, no, we have to do it. It's just the right thing to do. It says she also supported plans to help refugees fit into German society. So people arriving from some of those dangerous parts of the world that we mentioned, Iraq and Syria, they would come into Germany, their kids would be found a place in school, workers would be trained, or the older people would be trained to be workers, given German classes, given training for jobs, found homes to live in. So this was a big project, and it obviously cost a lot of money, and there were a lot of people in Germany who didn't think that this was good or the country could afford to do it. But Angela Merkel said, no, it's the right thing to do, so we have to do this.
那前面有提到梅克尔解决了很多难民的问题 Take in somebody 指的是让这些人来居住或者是接纳收留他们，也就是说他接纳来自世界各地的难民，让他们到德国来居住，帮助他们融入德国的社会。那融入适应我们可以用这个片语 fit into something.
Both leaders showed that women can lead with strength and intelligence. Absolutely. And yes, the strength that we're talking about here is not physical strength. We're not saying that Margaret Thatcher had muscles. We're talking about personal strength, the strength of her personality. Remember we said she was tough? Remember we said she was the Iron Lady, and even if there were difficult decisions to make that people would be upset about or criticize her for, both she and Angela Merkel will still take those decisions because they think it's the right thing to do for the country, even if people will be angry with them personally. So that's the strength we're talking about, the quality of being brave and determined in a difficult situation. If you don't run away from a crisis, but you jump in to try to help fix the problem, then you're showing some strength. Good for you. Here's an example of someone when they need strength. I really admired my aunt's strength when she was fighting cancer. It was difficult, it was painful, her hair fell out, it was very scary, but she never seemed to lose hope that she would get better.
那 strength 这个名词刚刚提到的是意志力 the ability to do things with a lot of mental effort. 那另外还有一个才智或者是智慧这个名词是 intelligence, the ability to learn and understand things. 那它的形容词则会是 intelligent, 后面是 t 而不是 ce.Thatcher
and Merkel broke down barriers and paved the way for future female leaders, which stressed the importance of women in government roles. Yeah, it's
They're
pretty
the pioneers.
Exactly, it's pioneers. And you know, just the fact that it's not strange for a woman to want to be the leader of the country. I don't remember when Tsai Ing-wen or other people in Taiwan were running to be the president or the mayor. I don't remember anyone saying recently, oh, she can't, she's a woman. You know, you don't hear that anymore. And partly it's because of people like Thatcher and Merkel, showing that women are perfectly capable of doing the job. You might not agree with them all the time as leaders, but there's nothing you can say to say that they can't be leaders. So they broke down these barriers. It's like they knocked down the walls separating women from being the leader of the country, and they paved the way for future female leaders. To pave the way is basically to clear a path. When we pave something in the real world, we're putting a road down. You know, when you see them digging up the road and they have that black stuff that kind of smells when they're laying down the new top surface of the road, that is to pave something. But here we're not talking about actually making roads. We're talking more like clearing a path. You know, if you cut a path through the forest that other people can then follow you, you're sort of clearing the way, paving the way. You're being a trailblazer. We might also call these ladies trailblazers. The first to do something really difficult, but what they did allows people later on to follow them and to do the same thing, but much more easily. That's the idea. For example, Jackie Robinson, the baseball player, paved the way for other black players to play baseball in the MLB.
Pave 这个动词指的是铺路或者是铺设。那 if you pave the way for something, you make a development possible by creating the right conditions. 也就是说，为某件事情创造条件。那在这边课文的意思是说，这两位女性领导者，她们打破了各种障碍，并且替将来的女性们创造了这样的一个先例条件。那 break down 这个片语指的是排除困难或者是扫除障碍。那另外 barrier 这个名词指的是障碍 a difficulty or an obstacle.
All right, so that's all the time we have for the article, but we do have this interesting chat question you guys can have a chat about. Why is it important to have women in government jobs?
I'd say why is it not?
Why is it not important?
Why is it not? Why do we have to talk about women in any kinds of fields, right?
Yeah, well, I would back that up by saying I think like 51% of the people on Earth are women.
Yeah.
So there should actually be more women than men in politics. It's not that way right now. It's getting there, but we're still a long way off.
那如果今天的主题让你觉得意犹未尽，你还可以加入空中家教和老师同学们一起讨论哦。So that's all we have for today.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Vocabulary Review.
Background. Howard and Raj come from different cultural backgrounds, so they don't always agree about the correct way to behave. Tough. My mom is really tough. She's able to balance work and family without getting stressed. Nickname. Samantha got her nickname, Speedy Sam, because she always runs the fastest in her school races. Union. The factory workers joined a union so they could receive more benefits at work. Strength. Although the weather was bad, Quinn's strength helped her reach the top of the mountains. Pave. The discovery of the new medicine paved the way for all kinds of treatments and cures.
字彙小补帖
Economy. Intelligence. Barrier.